I'm so honored that you are here today. This is our first Sunday where everybody's invited to come worship with us. It's amazing. So honored you're here. I want to say a special hello to those of you who are joining us online right now. Would you put your hands together and welcome our church family joining us online? We're honored you're with us today, and my hope is that if you're staying home because of health, we totally understand, but this is a safe place, and we really do believe that something special happens when we gather together in Jesus' name, so we hope you'll join us back here soon. Hey, we got a lot of stuff happening right now. This is the first Sunday, though. Liz said it a minute ago. This is the first Sunday since last year, this weekend, that we've been able to gather on a Sunday morning. I'm so excited to see you. And here's something that's encouraging to me. We've been meeting the last 2 weeks with just the people who serve here called Team Access. And the thing we've heard over and over and over again is this place, this building that's brand new to us, it already feels like home. So my hope is that you'll leave today and say, man, this is home. I love this place, and I'm honored you're with us. Today, I'm excited to kick off a 3-part teaching series that really is important. It's a series called All That Matters. And we're going to talk about this in just a moment, but I need you to know a few important dates that are coming up since we're brand new in this space, meeting for the first time in person in a year. Let me tell you some dates that matter. Today is the first of 3 days that we're calling a soft opening. What that means is we're still working on stuff. Like the chairs you're sitting in, okay, we put those together yesterday, all right? The streaming online happened yesterday. Like we are working around the clock to make this an amazing place for you to invite your family and friends. And I'm going to ask you to do that. In fact, for the next few weeks, as we get closer to our grand opening into Easter, let me give you a few challenges. Today, if you're watching online, you can share this link right now. In fact, if you have a phone now, you can pull it out and you can go to Facebook and you can share this live service. But also as you leave the room today, there's invite cards. I'd love for you to grab one of those and don't be shy. This is an awesome time to invite people to join us. The next 2 Sundays, we'll be meeting here at 9 and 10:30 a.m. We're also streaming it at 9 and 10:30. Want you to join us for that. But we already have this sense that there's already so much momentum and excitement about what's happening here that for our grand opening Sunday, March 28th, we have to add a 3rd service. So that's amazing. We're going to do an 8:30, 10, and an 11:30 service. All the information's on our website. Again, 8:30, 10, and 11:30. And then that's a big day. That's like a no-miss Sunday. We got all kinds of surprises planned for you on that Sunday. And while that's a big day, the next weekend is actually even bigger than grand opening Sunday because we're celebrating the greatest day in history. We're celebrating Easter, the resurrection of Jesus. So that's a big deal. So that weekend, we decided to go all in and add a 4th service on Saturday night at 6:30. And I'm going to ask some of you to make the shift to Saturday night. And here's the reason. If we're a selfless church, like we're not about us. We exist to meet the needs of others, to bless others, to serve others. And a practical thing that you can do is leave an open seat on Easter Sunday morning for someone who might use it to meet Jesus. And so this weekend's going to be amazing. Lots of great things coming up. I need you to be inviting. I need you to be sharing. We really do believe the best is yet to come for us. Well, today I'm kicking off a series called All That Matters. And for the next 3 weeks, we want to talk about the stuff that we really think matters to God. Now, early this week, I read an article that kind of messed me up because it made me feel old. Anyone ever have a moment when you feel old? It's funny how this works. Like it could have happened to you in high school, or in college, or in your 20s. I remember when I turned 30, I put it up on Facebook, something like, hey, to my friends who are in their 30s or older, does like life stop happening in your 30s? Does your body fall apart in your 30s? And the week of my birthday, we went to dinner with some friends, and we talked about this on the way out there, and I remember getting out of my car, and I took 2 steps, and I pulled my hamstring. Like, I felt old in this moment. Well, this week, I had another one of those days where I just felt like an old man. I felt like old and decrepit, right? I read this article, and it was just an article. Like, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, right? Like some fake news out there. So I read this article, but then it was confirmed by my friend with some awesome teenagers. And they told him this, and he confirmed it to me. I just felt old. Gen Z, the newest generation that's up and coming, says they can spot someone that's a millennial or older from a mile away, and here's 3 telltale signs that you are getting old. The first one is this: you do a side part in your hair. This hurts me. Like I just got used to this, right? All of us are going to be walking around looking like Dwight Schrute with our hair parted in the middle soon. Like, not down with that, but that's one. Another one, and this one bugs me, skinny jeans. If you wear skinny jeans, according to Gen Z, you're old. Now, I'm going to be honest. I've been working out for 2 years now. I just got comfortable showing my gams. You know what I'm saying? Like, just showing my legs. I'm uncomfortable with what I just said even. Like, I'm just uncomfortable. But now I'm doing this, and now that I'm doing it, it's over because I'm old. Here's the last one. This one might annoy me the most out of all three of them. If when you are texting someone, you use this emoji, according to Gen Z, you're old. The laughing emoji. Look, I'm going to be honest. I was a late adopter on emojis. I didn't use them. I thought, why would I send a picture when I can send a word? You know what I mean? And then I started using this, and now I use this on every text message I send ever. Like, it always has this in it, and now I'm old. Anybody ever have a moment when you feel old? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Here's the funny thing. If you study the lives of people that talk about their life at the end of their life, they'll tell you things like, some of the stuff that we focused on when we were younger really didn't matter, right? Like the stress that we carried, it wasn't that big of a deal. Some of the drama we walked through in our lives, really not that big of a deal. But when they recount their life at the end of their life, they all say something similar, which is what really mattered was family, was the love we shared, was the moments together. No one at the end of their life wishes they had spent more money on themselves. They wish they had given more away. It's just interesting how at the end of our life, we have this ability to look back at our life and to recount what really mattered. I want you to think about this for a moment. What do you think matters to God? When God looks down from heaven and surveys his creation, what do you think matters to him? For the next 3 weeks, I want to talk about what matters to God. What are not trends that will just fade away, but what actually matters to him? In 1 Corinthians, Paul is writing a letter to a church in Corinth. Corinth was this cool city. It was a leader in the world. Like, people wanted to be from Corinth. Corinth was to the world what Lakeland is to Polk County. It's like everybody wants to be from there. It's the best of the best, right? And it was known for inventions. It was known for creativity. They were some of the people who actually invented the mirrors. And it's interesting because they invent the mirrors and now people can see themselves more clearly, and they became vain, conceited. They cared about the outward appearance more than caring about who they were inside. And this is what Paul says to them. And he writes this at the end of what we call 1 Corinthians 13. Now, if you've ever been to a wedding, 1 Corinthians 13 is called the love chapter. And usually at a wedding, it's preached very flowery, very pretty and beautiful. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not boast. Love does not envy. Love is not proud. Love is not self-serving. It's beautiful. It talks about what love is and what it is not. But I don't actually think it was written that way. I think it's gritty. I think 1 Corinthians 13 is about the work of love. It's about the work that it takes to make love actually work, to make something last for a lifetime. And at the end of the chapter, he gives them this picture of what matters to God. And I love this. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 12, he says, "For now, we only see a reflection as in a mirror." He's talking to these people who had helped create the mirror. "Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." Now pause here for just a moment. Here's what Paul was saying. Our picture of earth, like what we're experiencing here in this moment and in this life, is only a glimpse of what eternity will be like. We only have a picture of what heaven with God will be like. We can guess as much as we want, but it's just a fleeting moment. It's a fleeting guess. But then he goes on in verse 13 to say, here's what's going to matter. "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." Now he's saying for a moment, this is a picture of what heaven is going to be like. Earth is a picture of what eternity can be like, but you need to understand something. These are the three that remain here. In heaven, this is going to be a little different. Here's the reason love is the greatest. Faith is about what is unseen. It's about what you do in the gap between what you hope for and believe for and experiencing what you had hoped for. It's that. But in heaven, we'll see God. We'll be with him. The unseen will be seen. Hope lives in the future. Hope is about tomorrow. Hope is a preferred picture of what could be. But in heaven, we get the best. There's not as much to hope for because we're literally there. But love transcends everything. Love will last forever. And in heaven, we get to experience the reality of God's perfect, infallible, unconditional love all the time. So the greatest of these is love. Eugene Peterson is one of my favorite people to ever write. And he translated the Bible into something called the Message translation. Takes it from a little bit of like a Shakespearean language to more modern language. And here's how he says it, same verses. He says, "We don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist. But it won't be long before the weather clears and the sun shines bright." He says, we'll see it all then, see it all as clearly as God sees us, knowing him directly just as he knows us. This is what heaven's going to be like. But for right now, here in this moment that we live, until that completeness, we have three things to do to lead us towards that consummation. Trust steadily in God, this is faith. Hope unswervingly, what a beautiful word picture. Love extravagantly, faith, hope, and love. And the best of the three is love. So what matters to God in this life? What matters to God in this season is that we be characterized as people of faith and hope and love. And as we lead up to grand opening and as we lead up to Easter Sunday, I want to spend the next 3 weeks talking about what these look like. And I want to start today by talking about faith, because for so many of us, we don't really know what faith is. We don't really know what to do with our faith. And so today, here's who I want to talk to. I want to talk to the person who today feels like they're living between a promise from God and the answer to that promise. To the mom who has prayed for their child who is far from God to come back to faith in God, but they're living in the middle of their story and they haven't had God answer their prayer yet. To the husband who prays every single day for his marriage to be miraculously restored, who feels like they've heard from God that God's going to step in and intervene, but he's living in the middle of his story and it's not yet answered. To the person who's been obedient and generous with their finances and they're waiting on God to step in and they're waiting on God to bless them. I want to speak to that person today. To the person who had a picture of a business that God placed in your heart and you're so desperate to get out of the grind of your 9 to 5 and to step into your dream, not so that you can make more money for you, but so that you can invest more in the kingdom of God and what God is doing, but you're living in the middle of your story. I want to talk to you today. Here's the point of today. You have no idea what God may produce through a single seed planted in faith. You have no idea what God can do today through you and in your life and as a part of your story through a single seed planted in faith. So what is faith? Let's get on the same page about faith and let's talk about what it looks like in our life. The author of Hebrews says this, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." So another way to say it is faith is full confidence that God is who he says he is and will do what he said he will do. Faith is trusting even when I don't see. Faith is believing that if God promised it, that God who is the promise maker is also the promise keeper. That God who gives his word always is faithful to keep his word. So if you're a note taker, maybe you find yourself in the middle of your story and you need to hear this. Faith is believing when I don't see. It's obeying when I don't understand. It's worshiping when I don't feel like it. It's trusting when I don't get it. Okay, I want to take a moment of honesty for a moment and ask, how many of you have ever been in a season of this? A season where you just didn't understand, you didn't believe, you didn't trust, you didn't know what to do. This is the story of faith. Today, what I want to do is I want to spend our time in an interesting story found all the way at the beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis. And we're going to go to Genesis 15. So if you brought your Bible or your phone or your iPad or whatever, get to Genesis 15 and we're going to get there in just a moment. But before we do, you need to understand what's happening in the story. There's a man named Abraham. Now, his name later gets changed to Abraham. When we meet him, it's towards the beginning of his story. His name was Abram, and God changes his name later. And Abraham lives this extraordinary life. In fact, a lot of our Christian faith is rooted in who he is. Like our story is directly tied to his story. And Abraham is this fascinating person because Abraham and his wife Sarah were getting older. And as they were getting older, they were unable to have a child. And in the time of the Bible, to have a child was seen as to be blessed by God. And to not have children were seen as to be cursed by God. And I just imagine that everybody was friends with Abraham and Sarah, but all of them were having kids and he couldn't. And they went to every single baby shower and their heart broken into a million pieces as they celebrated for their friends and grieved their own loss. And they couldn't get pregnant. They probably exhausted every modern medical observation that they had, every modern medical chance or trial that they could to try to get pregnant, but nothing was working for them. And then God shows up to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. Now this is important. Genesis chapter 12, God shows up to Abraham and he says, I want you to leave your place of comfort. And I want you to go to a land I've prepared for you. So I want you to leave. I want you to obey. And when you do, he says, I will make you into a great, and I want you to see what he says to Abraham, I'll make you into a great nation. Not a great person, not a great leader, not a great dad. I'm going to make you into a great nation. He says, you'll have so many descendants from you. Now remember, this is happening in Genesis chapter 12. Abraham and Sarah have tried everything they can. They still have no kids. But God shows up to him and he's like, if you'll obey me, if you'll step out in faith, I'll make you into a great nation. I'll make your name great. I'm going to elevate you. I'm going to do something so significant through your life that it changes every generation for the rest of the history of the world. I'll make you into a great nation. Okay, now this is important. This was Genesis chapter 12. 3 chapters later, the chapter starts like this. Genesis 15 says, sometime later. Okay, sometime later. So here's what I imagine happened. God shows up to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, says, I'm going to make you the father of a great nation. He goes home and tells his wife, and they're so excited that they start imagining what the baby room is going to look like. They buy whatever the ancient version of What to Expect When You're Expecting book, right? They plan their Instagram reveal. They plan their gender reveal party. They're going to do the thing where you pop it and confetti goes everywhere. They got it all figured out. That they know what the name is going to be. They pick a boy name and a girl name. They're doing all the stuff you do when you find out you're pregnant. They're excited about this, right? And then 1 month goes by. I mean, in our Bible, it's 3 chapters, but it's 1 month goes by. No pregnancy. Hey, no problem. God promised we're good. 2 months goes by. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months go by. If you've ever been trying to get pregnant and it doesn't happen for you right away, do you know that pain? Like when you're excited about the potential of having a baby and you try to get pregnant and it doesn't happen right away, it's heartbreaking. And Abraham and Sarah have had their heart broken month after month after year after year. They've celebrated with all of their friends, and sometime later, 10 years have gone by between chapter 12 and chapter 15. 10 long years. 10 years of negative pregnancy tests. 10 years of heartache. 10 long years between the promise and Genesis 15. I don't know where you stand today, but I know some of you came in today living between chapters 12 and 15 of your story. Sometime later, it says, God shows up. It says this, sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision, and he said to him, do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you. And he says, and your reward will be great. And Abram at this point is like some of us, kind of callous towards God. And he replied, oh, sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Like you promised me a nation 10 years ago and I don't even have one. He does the math in his heart and in his mind, and the mental math doesn't work. He says, how can I be the father of a great nation? Why should I expect your blessings when I can't even have one? Well, here was Abram's problem, and this is our problem too. We tend to think addition, but God is a God who thinks multiplication. We think one, he thinks many. I started this message by saying you have no idea how much God can produce through a single seed planted in faith. You have no idea what God's going to do. Well, in Abram's story, he finds himself heartbroken, unable to trust that God is going to do what he promised he would do. And we meet him 3 verses later hiding in his tent. Why do we do this? It's because when we're in pain, we want to retreat to a place of comfort. When we're hurt, when we're untrusting of what God has said, we get nearsighted. all we can see is our problems, our challenges, our obstacles. And he's in his tent telling God all the reasons that God hasn't intervened and already answered his prayer. Verse 5 says this, then the Lord took Abram outside. He gets him out of his place of nearsightedness. And he says, I want to expose you to something. You need to open your eyes. In fact, today, I think some of us, we need this. We don't need to leave a tent, but we need to leave a metaphorical tent. It's the tent of being all up in our emotions, all up in our feelings, all up in our untrust. The Lord took Abram outside, and he said to him, look up into the sky, count the stars. But count them if you can. There's so many. That's how many descendants you will have. Look up into the sky and see the stars and count the stars. You ever been somewhere where there's no city lights and a cloudless night and you can see the sky and how littered with stars that it is? You ever had this? Some years ago, I was in Fiji. I was at the end of high school. I was probably the best shape of my life at this point. And my friend was at one point an all-world class rugby player. And he invited me out in this field with all these big Fijian dudes to play a round of touch rugby. Now, in America, touch football, when you touch the person, they're down. All I remember is the first time I got the ball, I had two blockers in front of me. 3 huge Fijian guys plowed them. And the next thing I remember, I am waking up being dragged off the field because I've been knocked up out of my senses. You know what I'm saying? And I remember laying there on this beautiful cloudless night, seeing the southern hemisphere stars illuminate the sky, and there's so many of them. God leads Abraham outside. He says, look up at the stars. If you can count them, your descendants will outnumber them. Okay, check this out. At Genesis 28, as you keep reading, God says to Abraham, look at the grains of sand underneath you. Your descendants will outnumber the grains of sand. Think about sand and stars for a moment. Did you know that scientists believe that there are literally 10,000 stars for every 1 grain of sand on the earth? Can you get your mind around that? Like, go to the beach and pick up a handful of sand. I would think a handful of sand is more stars because it's more than I can see, but the expanse of God's creation goes farther than we could ever imagine. There's 7.5 sextillion grains of sand in the world, and there's 7 septillion stars in the universe. That's not an exact number, but that's as far as we know, right? 10,000 stars to every 1 grain of sand. What is God saying? You have no idea how limitless my power is. So trust me, come out of your place of hiding and see what I can do. God says to Abraham, look at the stars in the sky. Your descendants will outnumber the stars in the sky. As you read on the story, God fulfills his promise. Abraham and Sarah, even in their old age, have a son. It was the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Isaac, their son, God uses to be, the beginning of Abraham's story where he becomes the father of many nations. In fact, towards the end of Scripture, Paul says this in Galatians. He says, if you belong to Christ, and that includes us, then you are Abraham's seed. You are one of the stars illuminating the sky. Why? Because the God who gives his promise is always the God who keeps his promise. He's not the God who just gives his word and says, we'll see how it goes for you. He's the God who keeps his word. So many of us, we live in this reality of, I can't really trust God if I can't see it. I can't trust God if I'm not seeing the results. And so we're living between chapters 12 and chapter 15 of our life. And I just want to say to you, a life of faith is different than a life in the natural. In a life of faith, you need to understand this. Seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing. It's saying, God, I believe that you said this to me. God, I believe that you've given your word. And so I'm going to stay faithful until I see your promise fulfilled. Corrie ten Boom said it like this. Said, faith is like a radar that sees through the fog. Faith is what matters to God. And we said this earlier. You have no idea what God can produce through a single seed planted in faith. Jesus at one point said, if you have faith like a mustard seed, it's not like tons of faith. It's just a little bit of faith. If you have faith like a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Why does he say this? Think back to 3rd grade science. 3rd grade science, you learn about plants and vegetation and fruit, and you learn about seeds. And a little seed is loaded with potential. And when it's planted, think about what happens. You cannot see the activity of the seed. So many of us live in this world where it's like, God, I can't see what you're doing. And so we assume that because we can't see what he's doing, he must be inactive. We feel like because he's silent, he's not working on our behalf. But a seed takes time to be broken open and to grow roots and to grow depth before we ever see that which it was created to produce. A good seed planted in faith literally will grow, and its produce, what it produces, will outnumber the seed 1,000,000 to 1. You serve the God of potential if you'll trust him and plant a seed of faith. So these last 3 or 4 weeks, as we've been in the final stages of getting into this facility, it's funny to me how all up in my feelings I've been. Here's the reason. Next weekend is the 14th anniversary of when our first little college Bible study met in my house with my wife, Liz, 14 years ago. 15 of us sat around, and we dreamed of this new kind of community, the kind of place where people were allowed to bring their doubt in, skeptics were welcome, the kind of place where we believe that God can do anything, the kind of place where everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect, and anything's possible. We dreamed of this place. And we planted this seed of faith, and I remember struggling in that season as we were doing this, because this little seed of faith was a college Bible study. There was no paycheck. This wasn't a job. This was just us trusting God. In that season, the hard part for us was we had real job offers. We had people offer us, paychecks. And I could see that. But in my heart, I just had this picture. God, you've asked us to do this. We're going to step out in faith and trust you even when we don't see. And for years, I wanted to quit every single Monday. Not because you're not amazing, but because it was hard. And there was no hope on the horizon. Whole years went by. Literally 12-month periods went by where we didn't even look at one single possible location for our church to meet because there weren't any. And I've been all up in my feelings because if I was living between chapter 12 and 15 of my life and of our church's story for so many years, I wanted to give up. So many years we wanted to throw in the towel, but we just understood something, that you have no idea the power of a single seed of faith planted in faith. That God who makes the promise is the God who fulfills the promise. So my question to you today is simply this. What are you believing God for? What is the part of your story that you desperately need God to intervene in? The relationship that's hanging on by a thread. That area of need in your finances. The hopelessness that you feel. What is the area that you just believe that God made a promise to you, but you're living between the 12th and the 15th chapter of your life? What is that place for you? Here's what I know. Faith is the bridge between what you hope for, the promise from God, and what you see. What would it look like if all of us made this decision to do all that matters to God, which is to be characterized by faith? We're going to get to hope and love, but let's be people of faith. The kind of people who actually believe that if God said it, he's going to do it. The kind of people who fully believe that if God made a promise, that he is faithful to his promises. Like my faith isn't in me. My faith isn't in my ability. My faith is in the faithfulness of God. Go back to Abraham's story with me for just one moment. We think addition. We want God to step into our story. In Abraham's story, he was saying, God, I want a son. What God was understanding is that if he would be faithful and trust through his seed, he would get you and me. Listen to me. Don't you dare limit the unlimited potential of God based on your limited reasoning, intellect, and understanding. God is able to do exceedingly, abundantly more than we ever hope or think. Don't you limit him, but instead be honest. God, I'm living between the 12 and the 15. I need you to step in. I need you to intervene in this situation, and I have faith that you can. Would you bow your head and close your eyes all across this room with me for just a moment? I'm going to ask you to take a moment, and I'm going to ask you to think, what is the area in your life where you need God, the area you've been trusting him for. What is between your 12 and your 15? Maybe you found yourself so desperately needing him, and today I came to tell you he is the God who is faithful, and he's worthy of your faith. Let's pray together. So God, we come to you today believing that you are faithful. Our faith isn't in our ability. Our faith is rooted in your faithfulness. So God, like Abraham, some of us are living in this weird part of our story between the promise and the fulfillment, between hoping and seeing you come through. So God, I'm asking you to do what only you can do, which is to step into these stories, intervene in ways that only you can so that you will get the credit for it. God, we love you. We thank you that you are the miracle working God. So we stand in faith, believing and trusting in Jesus' name. Amen. With your head still bowed and your eyes still closed for just one moment. I would be remiss to leave today without giving you an opportunity to make a decision to follow God. Maybe some of you showed up today and you don't know the God we're talking about. You came in today, you hear me talking about the faithfulness of God, and you don't even know him. Whether you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, or maybe you've wandered away from it and today you want to restart your relationship with him, right now is your moment. If this is you, I'm going to ask you to just, in this moment, would you just raise your hand and say, Jason, today I want to surrender my life to Jesus. Thank you over here. Yep, thank you back here. Yep. This is your moment. If this is you, I'm going to ask you right now to pray this prayer with me. Listen, praying a prayer only changes things if you mean it with your heart. So would you pray this with me today? Would you say, Jesus, today I surrender control of my life to you. I ask you to be the Lord of my life. I ask you to take control. And Jesus, from this day forward, I'll live for you. I love you, and I surrender all of me to you. Jesus, I believe you came into this world and died on a cross for me. And because of your great sacrifice, now my life can be made new. So Jesus, I confess that I need you. I've sinned. I believe that you are the Son of God who gave your life for me. And because of your great sacrifice, now my life can be made new. So Jesus, I give you my life for the rest of my life. I love you and I surrender to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, church, look up at me. We just had people pray to make that decision. Can we celebrate together?